everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I am your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Langston Moore. Langston played professional football for the NFL for a total of 6 seasons. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 6th round of the 2003 NFL Draft and played for them from 2003 to 2004. He then played for the Arizona Cardinals in 2005 and the Detroit Lions from 2006 to 2008. After leaving the NFL, he joined the Gamecock IMG Sports Network in 2012 as the sideline reporter for football broadcasts. Hello, Langston. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited. Let's go.
Yes, let's dive right into it because you have, I already know, some amazing stories and journeys and perspectives on all things. So to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Langston Moore?
You asked me yesterday, I probably would have gave you a different definition, and you asked me when I played in the NFL and all those different things. But today, I would probably have to say success means freedom and options. With football and sports, there's a lot of, certain times of the years and certain regiments, a lot of military kind of tip of the caps to that, where a lot of similarities between the military and sports and guys getting into these regiments. And a lot of times these things serve guys for a lifelong time. But I've kind of seen it serve football guys and high achieving athletes kind of in the opposite way, where you kind of get locked in and think that, it's always going to be, your senior year, or you do X and get out Y in life and success, starting a business, marriage, whatever, however you want to, kind of coin what success is to you. That's something that's always changing and evolving. So for me, it's always about learning, figuring out different ways to take what I've learned, whether it's been losses, because, it's funny, you talk about these NFL teams, and most people, when they think about NFL and success, I always tell folks that, yeah, I played in the NFL, but I played for the worst teams in the NFL. And if you don't believe me, just look at my record. I played for the Detroit Lions. We went 0-16, and our only gift to the city was, Matthew Stafford getting that first overall pick to come to Detroit. So my whole point is, you can think life and success is going to take you down one path, but a lot of times it's always the other things that always come up. And for example, us writing books and creating a whole bunch of different things that were kind of always right there in the periphery, but as you go through life and learn and experience life and figure out what success is, what, all these different things are, I think it's one of those deals where you kind of have to take all those lessons and learn and apply them kind of to what we kind of coin with our next business and our next play philosophy, where, in sports, they always talk about good play, bad play, doesn't matter. It's about the next play. And so for us, when we're doing our businesses and we're talking our keynotes, or we're doing our literacy lessons for schools and districts, that's one of the biggest things we always take with kids. It's not about the successes or the losses. It's about the lessons from those things and taking them and helping you build your path to your next play.
And I love that in that answer, because it really does ring true in so many facets. One being that we can think we know what journey and what track we're on today, and tomorrow you could wake up and there's a massive pivot that you have to take, or that fork in the road where you have to make decisions, or you have work to get to a top of the mountain, which could be, and I'll use your story as an example, like NFL draft day, you get picked. And for a lot of people, that's like, oh my God, you've achieved success in your sport. You've not only are you now a part of the league, you got drafted.
Right.
And you've made it. But just because you're at the top of the mountain today doesn't mean that's the top of the mountain you'll be at all the time. And so I want to start with you kind of highlighting your draft experience, because for a lot of people, when they look at getting drafted, or they don't know the NFL side of things or pro sports, they're just seeing draft on the television, and they don't know the stressors that come with going through the draft. You were part of the draft. you were drafted in the 6th round, which again, to a lot of people is due to, and it is true, it is due to work and dedication, and nothing else. Like, but it's also a little bit of luck because you could be the best player on that draft board and not get drafted at all. But when you were drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 6th round, what were your emotions like? What was your mindset like? And how did that experience kind of shape you as a football player and a leader?
Well, I can be honest here because nobody's paying attention, right? I was disappointed because, and it's funny, you talked about a lot of different things about draft success. Expectation was a word that kept coming up in the forefront of my mind because, expectation and timing. The year that I got drafted in 2003, there was a really good college football team. They've been good for a couple years before, the Miami Hurricanes, and I want to say they had something like 8, 9 guys drafted off their defensive line, which was the position that I drafted in. Now, typically, there's probably going to be about 30 to 40 guys getting drafted. And so 10, almost 1/3 of those guys all came from that one team because of that year. Now, if I messed around and maybe failed some classes and I was a year behind or maybe a year ahead, my draft status would have been different because I always tell the joke, I was the first overall pick, but I was the first overall pick of the 6th round. So the money was way different. It's way different than the first round money, which means my mama, God bless her, she was a school teacher. She had to go back to work the next day. Like, yeah, she knows her son has a football job. He got drafted. That's cool. But no, it's not the millions of dollars. And again, there was some money in there and there was a signing bonus. But, it's always funny when you're thinking about expectations because, going through the draft process, you see a lot of guys nervous. You see a lot of the families nervous. But, it's kind of like that old sports adage, all the hay is in the barn, all the draft day, just like graduation day, just like wedding day. All of that is the precursor of all the work that you've done before. And again, you really can't kind of control anything on those days. Yeah, you try to hope people are on time or they call your name at a certain time in the draft. But for the most part, you've done all that you can do. And I think that's, again, a great big lesson for myself with success and trying to do different things because that is the biggest stage. Everybody's looking at you. Everybody's watching you. Everybody's looking, oh man, did so-and-so from South Carolina get drafted? All those different things. So there is a lot of pressure with that. And that's some of the things that you have to kind of take with you. Those are the lessons I've kind of taken with me onto my kind of like next play. And you hear me say this a lot because, again, you can only do so much work. You can only do what you can do, control what you can control. And again, that's one of the benefits of sports because you understand that. But now, again, being a high achiever, getting some calls the couple of days before because take a quick peek behind like the draft process, teams are always working the phones. You see all these different guys on there. So when you start getting a kind of a sequence of calls, it might be a really good clue that, man, this team is going to take me. So the day before, because there were 3 days on my draft day, there's the first round and there's the second day and then there's the third day for, kind of the last guys where I got picked. Second day, I got a couple calls from some teams and I was a little bit upset. I was like, oh man, I hadn't been getting the calls, and my agent was just, the agent, their whole deal is just to play, therapist the day of draft day, is just to be relaxed, calm down, go eat some chicken, come back, look at the TV. But I started getting some calls, so I got really excited. And then all of a sudden, the calls kind of stopped. So it felt like they were, for whatever reason, like my number was coming up on the draft boards, and then for whatever reason it stopped. And you see this every year where there's a run on running backs. There's Spencer Rattler was a guy who from South Carolina came out of the draft this year, really highly talented. But, there was a long time between Michael Penix getting drafted or all these other quarterbacks getting drafted in the first round and Spencer getting his name called when he was cleared the next quarterback. But it was a really long time before you heard your name called. So all that to say, all these things have, again, lessons kind of prepare because I think, oh man, once I get into the NFL, I won't have to deal with these things before again. But no, I've had to deal with them in our book publishing company, real estate, all the different things that I'm into. And there's no better place to kind of cut my teeth and understand that if I can kind of manage the craziness of NFL football, the number one sport, I'm passionate about, if I can kind of manage those things, control what I can control over here, it's the same way with anything else. And that's definitely something I've learned with being a father, with businesses. And you think playing football is tough, but trying to raise your teenage daughter, that's even tougher. So the point is, you are right. There is a lot of the harder you work, the luckier you get. But sometimes timing is just out of your realm. If you were the guy who came up with Wi-Fi before the internet happened. I mean, one thing is useless before the other, but time and an idea, all those things kind of merging together. And it's kind of just like that old sports adage: the more you kind of prepare, whether you're a starter or a guy coming off the bench, there will be a time when you get an opportunity. The thing is, are you going to be prepared, and are you going to enjoy it and flourish in that moment of that? Because again, you really can't control who drafts you, like the Cincinnati Bengals. I always tell the joke. My mom was from Ohio. She grew up in Eastern Ohio. So again, I should have understood and remembered that the Bengals had a team. And when they called me and drafted me, I was like, oh, damn, I forgot. Cincinnati does have a football team. Like, again, they weren't very good. But it's just always one of those deals that it just always reminds me, you just can only control what you can control. And that sounds like a trite thing. And that's a lot of things that folks don't want to hear. But it is something that kind of buoys you in the world when you're trying to be on your success journey, when you're trying to go on your journey to have whatever it is you want to do in life.
And I want to talk more for a moment about your NFL journey. Because, like I mentioned in the introduction, you played for a total of 6 seasons, which is not necessarily the norm. A lot of people don't realize that not everyone is a Tom Brady, Eli Manning, where you're getting 10 years. The average player actually only plays for 3 seasons. And that is sometimes, and Langston knows this, but a lot of our listeners might not, is that just because you got drafted, and I'll use Langston as an example, in 2003, if you don't play for a certain amount of time in that season, your season doesn't count.
Right.
You're still a rookie the next year.
I know guys who have been time-wise, been in the league, been in the NFL for about 8 years. But as far as like accrued seasons that go towards your benefit and getting the money that's going to help you later on when these knees ain't working at the ripe old age of 32, 33 years old, he's only got 2 or 3 credited seasons. And so it's funny how statistics and math work, because the average career in the NFL is 3 years, but to get a pension, you need 3 years and 3 games. So it's funny how math and those things work, because there are more guys on the cusp of getting their retirement, on the cusp of being vested in all those different things. So I always have to, and this is one of the things about my success journey is, trying to take a look back and be appreciative, because a lot of times when we're on the hustle to be something or to have something or to be successful, we lose sight of all the things that we've done. And I always got to kind of remind myself that, I made the joke that I played for the worst teams in the NFL, but I played for longer than most folks ever did. I played double, and I always tell the joke that they finally figured out that I couldn't play and they got rid of me. But that is something to take care of. And this is one of the things we talk about when we work with corporate groups, when we work with high achievers, when we work with a lot of high school kids, is part of securing the bag. And we love acronyms. BAG is always standing for blessings, accomplishments, and goals. There are no small accomplishments. Whether it's just you being a great father, or you fooling them in the NFL and playing for the worst teams for 5 years, it doesn't matter. And a lot of times we think success has to look this way, winning a Super Bowl, winning all those different things. And it's funny, and this is the great thing about my next success journey, being a speaker and doing a lot of work in the public schools and different businesses, is that folks are like, oh man, oh, you played in the NFL and da, 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 da. But on the topical level, on the surface level, for them, it sounds good. But once you start digging into the story, you're like, oh, well, you didn't really win. You didn't really. And so success, and again, it's always an inside job. I think there's a book about that somewhere, but it goes back to this whole deal that, expectations, reality, all these different things. It's a hard deal. And, the NFL stands for not for long for a reason. A lot of people think it stands for the National Football League, but by the time you get to that 3rd year, that's really the cutting point where, do you really want to go right or left? Do you really want to keep running your head into certain people? And I'm sure it's the same way for basketball. This is the same way for a guy who's been in, minor league baseball. He's right on the cusp. You hear these stories every spring time where a guy's been in minor leagues for 15 years and he's just now getting his first little, so again, those are, I don't know if I could hang on that long, but, it's one of those deals where, you got to kind of take the macro and micro picture of a lot of things where, to be successful, you got to kind of have a really small hyper focus, think about the things that are kind of right in front of you. But there's going to become times where you kind of have to pull back that tape and look at your tape and say, oh man, I have been doing some really good things. Maybe I haven't won a Super Bowl. Maybe I haven't been started. Maybe I didn't get that contract that I anticipated when I was in 12th grade, but I am playing in the NFL, and I am one of the 1% that made it. So, there's a lot of stuff that we talk to kids about and we talk to different groups about where a lot of times you forget all the accomplishments that you've had. And a lot of times these are the things you're going to have to stand on when you're playing for an 0-16 Detroit team, or because again, how you do things, how you do certain things. Even though we were losing a bunch of games, I wasn't a loser. It just was, accumulation of Dan Orlowski as our quarterback and being hurt and playing in the NFC North when Brett Favre was coming back. So again, there's that timing deal over and over again. You can only kind of control those things in your mindset on that success journey right there.
And one of my final questions, I say this is going to be my final question on the topic of the NFL aspect of your journey, but you might say something and then I got to ask the follow-up.
Oh,
but I think another additional level to your journey within the NFL sphere is not only did you play, like you said, double the amount of time the average player actually does play. Now, again, like Langston and I just mentioned, that does not mean that you get to go, okay, I played for 6 seasons. 6 seasons count. Some guys, it looks very different. They might have been in the league for 2 or 3 seasons, and 0 seasons count. But you also had the extra layer of part of your journey being drafted, playing for so long, but you were also traded to a total of 3 different teams, from what you were drafted, and then you got traded to 2 other teams. And I talk with a lot of players, and when I worked in the league in player engagement, we talked a lot about what it is truly like getting traded one day and having to potentially next day be at a different stadium, a different group of guys, a different area away from your family. And I always try to have conversations, especially with individuals who aren't in the league, of what that truly means. Like when you take the numbers and the money and the, oh my God, they get to play the sport they're super passionate about. They've been working so hard. They are one of those 1%ers. There's a lot of hardship that can also go into playing and getting traded specifically. So for you, what was it like being traded, and what was your kind of perspective at the time around that? And fast forward some years, your perspective now.
Yeah, I'll make one little correction. I wasn't traded, I was cut. And that's it is very similar because when you're drafted, teams have your rights. So anytime you're released or cut, it's like you're a free agent. So you kind of get that 24-hour period. And how it works in the NFL, when you're cut, it goes from the worst team gets to get a chance to pick you first from the best team. So I don't know if there's like a little lotto ball somewhere, a little thing in New York City where they have Langston Moore on the ping pong ball, and he got cut today. So that's really how I ended up with with going from Cincinnati to Arizona, because I did start in Cincinnati my second year, made it through the third year, and for whatever reason I didn't make the last cut, because that's kind of the gift and the curse of, you want to come in and be an undrafted guy, but once you start playing, you start to add more value. So it can kind of be the gift and the curse. So that year in Cincinnati, after I started, they drafted a really high pick from Michigan State right up the road. And he was a little bit cheaper than me because he was on the timetable right behind me, and I was getting ready. So it made economical sense that, we're going to cut this guy who was a starter last year because he's going to be expensive next year, and we didn't have plans to keep him anyway. So the whole point is, yes, you have to be very fluid. It's just like, going back to that military analogy, you're training over here, but all of a sudden we need to deploy you over there. But the only difference is with this, you're by yourself. You don't have maybe your unit or your deal here. You do have your family, but God bless you if you're taking your family all over the places with you as you're getting cut. So for me, when I was in Cincinnati, you get the news, you get cut, and then within 24 hours, you have to be at the next team, wherever that is. So geographically, going from Cincinnati to Arizona, okay, there's cold weather. Now we're out here in the desert, and then there's dry heat, and there's just, okay, now we don't, it's 3-hour time difference, and I'm an East Coast guy. But Arizona, we're working out at 4 a.m. to keep up with East Coast guys because, NFL guys are sick and we're not going to be outworked by the New York Giants on the East Coast who started their practice team. So, we're out here in Phoenix, Arizona practicing at 5:30 in the morning. We're like, what is going on? And this is what I signed up for. This is what I said I thought success would be like. And that is one of the things that weeds you out. That is one of the things that, whether it's baseball, whether it's gymnastics, I'm thinking about the ladies in the W, them. I mean, look here, man. I lived in Phoenix for a bunch of years. Every year at the end of the season, I'd be getting on a plane to go back home to my home to chill out. I see Diana Taurasi finishing out her Phoenix Mercury season and getting on a plane the very next day to go this way. I'm going to the East Coast. She's going west to whatever country is going to pay her and supplement her income. And she's one of the greatest. Now, again, Diana Taurasi is still out here playing, hooping, telling Caitlin Clark she coming for her and all those different things. So that really shows you it's not about all that stuff. She's made up her mind a long time ago that, it doesn't matter the travel. She loves ball. And that's the thing. I think I heard, Herm Edwards always says, do you love ball or do you love what it gives you? And so, again, there comes a time where you start to say like, oh, man, I don't love it like I used to. And that's kind of how it weeds itself out. But the traveling, you're getting on a plane at 10 o'clock in Cincinnati, you arrive in Phoenix at 12 o'clock. Now it's the time change, but we got practice tomorrow at 5:30. Let's make sure you're on time. And that's the other thing. You got a lot of emotional stuff going on, but they're expecting you to come out there and perform. It's no different than I ordered a car off of Carvana, or I hope you don't have a car sponsor or something like that. And it's supposed to be here tomorrow. As soon as it gets here, it better be working. And it's the same way. We just got this defensive tackle. We got him on the cheap. He's coming in. Man, I'm sure he's probably a little mad. He better come out here and perform. Well, if I'm, just had maybe I'm a little sad or depressed that I have to leave my wife or my girlfriend or my dog, or I really love Cincinnati. And, a lot of that stuff you really have to compartmentalize. And, I hate to kind of just continue to try to make that, analogy between military and this, but like you have a duty and you got to kind of, just kind of be really sick about it. Just put these things over here. Now, the easiest part after that point was the actual physical part. Like, because that's the thing where, for me, all the emotion, where am I going to stay? Okay, we got a meeting, but at 4 o'clock, everybody's going home. But Langston, you just got here last night. So we got to figure out where you're going to stay. You're going to stay in a hotel for the next month. We got corporate housing. Is your girlfriend coming with you? Is your dog coming with you? And all these different things. And on top of this, you might be in a position where maybe you got brought in right before, a week or two before we've made the final cut. So you don't know if you're actually going to be there. Mm-hmm. Maybe, for me, luckily, I got there after the final cut. So my spot was kind of guaranteed. But again, that didn't last very long because the very next year, they cut me in the middle of the season. So again, the NFL stands for not for long. So emotionally, I had bought a house out there. I was like, okay, Phoenix is a great place. But lo and behold, I buy a house in the year 2008, if anybody remembers the mortgage crisis and all that. So again, life is happening on life's terms at all the time. So it doesn't matter if you're in the NFL, talking about success for me, making a successful transition with my family, making a successful transition from, okay, even if I do get cut here, I can stay in Phoenix, stay out there, work out, train, do all the things that I need to do to take care of myself, even if I have to go over, or maybe this is the end of the road. Because for me, at that point, it was getting to be about that 3-year mark. And I was like, I was a little worried about, what my future would have might have been like. So, there is a huge emotional component to it. And I always tell folks it's, for those guys, I mean, I think about Baker Mayfield. I mean, he played a couple years ago, got cut and didn't play. And they brought him in the night before the Monday night game, and he won the Monday night game as a quarterback when you didn't even know who the players were, who the, his teammates were, who the playbook was. And I mean, I just, sometimes it's just dumb luck, but for a lot of stuff, the emotional part of it, the football part, being on the field, that's probably the easiest part. That's probably the most like, oh, I just can't wait to get to game day because I know what I can expect with that. Everything else is tough. And that's a great question that you bring up because, as players, there's always transition. You look at this ticker tape, they're making transitions all the time. They're trading guys all the time. So it's one of those deals where you want to make sure that you're mentally got your mind right together because, again, it is, at the end of the day, nobody cares that, you missed your flight and you're feeling a little jet lag. They're going to tell you, drink a Gatorade to come out here and throw this quick out route.
And you're so right. And I mean, I put the little caveat that I love the fact you're making military analogies, so you could keep making them for twofold, because working for the NFL and working with players in a lot of different leagues for 7+ years, and some will never let me go, so I'll keep doing it. And I love working with them on different projects and working um, for with the military, going in and speaking, and now my boyfriend being in the military. I've seen things at all capacities, and one thing I always say is being in the inside huddle of the NFL and really working in player engagement and working alongside all the players and then working in PR, the conversations weren't necessarily around on the outside of, okay, what happens when you get traded? But in the inside, I had many conversations with guys of like, okay, I'll help you get housing. I'll go and do this. And then be like, okay, but like, can I do a month to month? Or what happens in the middle of the month if I have to break that lease? Can you have conversations on my behalf because of that? Because I don't want to sign, sign with you guys, then get a house or even an apartment, and in 2 weeks I gotta be out because I get picked up from somewhere else. And then that's money wise that you have to think about those things. It's the side of leaving family, like you said, leaving loved ones and the time differences. And you really do see that with the military. And now I see it even differently because I'm living some of that as I get ready and have relocated myself due to military orders that have been given. And, a lot of time you think of players, but you don't always think of the spouses that have to go. And like, calling your loved one and going, okay, we're moving. Oh, wait, you know what? Kids have school tomorrow. So you stay here. I'm going to go out there. I'll figure it out. And then we'll navigate from there. There's a lot of those unknowns. And a lot of people forget that that is part of players, especially players. Because when you think of military, I should say, you kind of know. When you get in, every 2 years, every 3 years, you could you're going to be going to a different base, or you could wake up tomorrow and get orders that you're deploying in the next few days. There's that expectation. When you play a professional sport, some of that expectation isn't there because you just don't know and you're so focused, and it doesn't get talked about a lot until you're actually in it and they go, your ticket's been punched. Okay, now where are you going?
Yeah, and that's again another caveat to success is, as you start to move up the rung from high school into college, okay, college they'll have some certain things. Okay, you got to go see this person for housing over here, and you got to go do this over here, and talk to this person about parking tickets. And one thing about the association between the military, at least with the United States military, they're going to have a set system. Whether you're going to Japan, Korea, coming back to South Carolina, wherever, you go see this person with that. Every team doesn't operate the same way. Some teams are like, you rich, you got money, you've been in the league for 3 or 4 years. Here's a list of places. Here's a guy you can talk to about this. And it kind of shows you, I'm not going to name any names, but again, you can look at the teams that I play for and see where they still rank at. Somebody got to be number 30, 31, or 32 in the NFL. And everybody doesn't operate that same way. And so again, it is really tough. It is really to make that phone call to, try to figure out, damn, I'm in the middle of meetings and I'm trying to text and see who has the best school district in Maricopa County because I got a high schooler and I got an elementary kid. And then, God bless our wives and our significant others because, okay, maybe we had a plan for this. You're going to stay back here and, we got the kids in school, but eventually we're going to get you to come out here. And so now as a wife, as a spouse, you're trusting your husband who didn't make the football team. He got cut. Is he going to be making the right choices out there? Because we just had a conversation the other day. You sure you're going to start this year, right? Now, where are you at on the depth chart? I was looking at some. And so there's just so much emotional stuff, a lot of stuff you can't control. But then you start thinking about self-worth and value and, all of those, especially those things at the highest rung. Because again, the NFL, it's about performance. It's about what have you done for me lately. It's about, you can be, somebody ranked very high at the beginning of the draft season, and at the end of the year, you're a free agent guy who barely might make a camp roster. Again, these things happen very quickly. So again, the more you can kind of buoy yourself, steady yourself, it's tough, but it's easier said than done. And that's why support systems, the organizations, even companies that we work with and do a lot of speaking with now, you can tell the difference between them making sure that they take care of their people so their people can perform versus the team that says, here's a list of 3 hotels. They got long extended stay. You can stay here and pay, yeah, you get the Bengals rate, but it's going to be $3,000. You're like, man, I'm staying $3,000 to stay at a Holiday Inn Express. I could have, rented a house or a penthouse for something. And so, a lot of times you're just trying to figure this out. And I see kids, and that's why, again, just like the military community, the locker room is so very important because, again, you got the locker room is really just like society. There's some old guys down there who are about to retire. There's some young guys in the middle. There's some fresh guys who don't know what's going on. They got kids, they got graduates. But the more you can kind of ingratiate yourself into the locker room and start having these conversations and kind of making yourself vulnerable, the more you can kind of help yourself out so you can perform on the field and in the classroom with your team. And it's the same way with the military. Like I said, when you go there, you go see this person, we'll get your housing, we'll get this for you, get this for you. It's not like that everywhere. And again, you would think because you're in the NFL, you have money and access. There's so many things swirling around, and a lot of times that takes a physical toll on you. And that's where you kind of see guys say, "Man, I'm done with this. I've been cut 5 times. Maybe this next team I would have gone to, they were going to let me start this year, or I earned a way to start, but I don't even feel like going through that this year because of the 5 other years I spent doing X, Y, Z and moving my family." It's tough, man. It's a very, very tough deal, and it's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
As you have transitioned out of football and then you went to an analyst position and going into broadcasting and now really making an impact doing speaking at organizations with students, what has that journey been like to you, and how has your playing days and different experiences shaped your impact you want to leave?
Well, I know one thing. To play football, to play it at the levels that we've played it at, and get to the top. I'm not afraid of work. I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm not afraid of. Some would probably even say I'm a little foolish because, again, you choose to run your head into people and call that a good time. Like, I mean, I guess what I'm saying. But it showed me that my capacity for work. Now, again, all work changes. Work is totally different now. Being a public speaker and trying to build a business, or creating a publishing company, or collaborating with an illustrator to write a book, and trying to figure out, do we want to have a traditional book with these many pages, or we want to buck the system and go this way? With sports, there were maybe certain things that you can do, but one of the things about sports and why we named our company Athletes and Artists is because all athletes are creatives. All athletes are artists. How you move your body, how you train. Calvin Johnson might train. He's a wide receiver, but he trains totally different from Larry Fitzgerald, who is also a wide receiver, both Hall of Fame guys, but they use their creativity, what they have at their disposal on their easel, their body, their whatever, in a creative way. And so for me, that's been one of the most probably liberating and fun things. And one of the scary things, because with sports, you get, 4 quarters. I know I need to practice. I know, when it's you on your success journey or your next play, who knows? You might need to make 10 calls before you get one yes. And maybe you just need to make those 10 more calls to get, more. You don't know. In sports, 1st and 10, do it again. I know I got 100 yards. You don't really see the end. But like with sports, there was that time where you didn't know how many sprints you had, or you didn't know, man, I've been working this move on this guy, and it finally worked at the 4th quarter. And it's the same way with this right here. Now, again, it doesn't feel as laid out and as sequential as maybe sports or a football game or a season might go. But it also shows me I can endure these things. So I really love the creative process of, creating, coming up with books. Me and my partner, we've not only published one book, but we published 3 books on our own. And we pretty much took a story that we used to hear from one of our coaches, Lou Holtz, a phenomenal man. When we first started off writing, we were like, oh man, we're going to write leadership books like Lou Holtz did at the age of like 24. Lou Holtz has obviously got a whole, he's come out of the Appalachians, the Depression, he's won national championships. And here we are trying to figure out, oh, we can write some leadership stuff just like him. But no, we couldn't. We had a lot more living to do. So again, that's another lesson that sports taught me. Like, yeah, that move that used to work all the time in high school don't work here in college. You can't abandon it, but it's the same way with this. So yeah, we had an idea, maybe a little bit too early to try to be on Lou Holtz level. So we took a story we heard and crafted it and used all of the things that were kind of right there. So you talk about broadcasting. I never really thought about broadcasting, but why wouldn't I think about broadcasting? My dad was a broadcast journalism major at South Carolina. He worked in radio. I spent most of my life underneath a control board, never been afraid of microphones, interviewing people. So, for me, when I finally put two and two together, that, oh man, you can go do some broadcasting over here, and you can do it for your team, which is a lot more fun than trying to do it on a team that you don't care for. All of those things, there's nothing wasted, and that's one of the things that we always try to convey to folks. Where just because you got to know today doesn't mean it might be a yes tomorrow, or just because you wrote that manuscript out and that was supposed to be your first book in the series. Doesn't mean you burn it and get rid of it, because there's been plenty of times we've gone back and taken ideas. Same way with football, same way with sports. Yeah, that move I used to try to, do that swim move all the time. It doesn't work. Now it works over here in this defense. So it's about the creativity, giving yourself the freedom. But it's not always easy, because when you're trying to figure it out, when you're trying to make the roster, or like you said, you're out there in the middle of the field thinking about, man, what school should I just put my kids in homeschool and private school? And like, there's so much to take care of, but it all goes back to a football adage that Lou Holtz taught me, is that to win, you got to figure out what's important now. And that's what the acronym stands for. The more you ask yourself what's important now, the more it keeps you on the track. So if you're on the football field in the middle of practice, what's important now is that you pay attention to that instead of getting your block knocked off, thinking about literacy rates at the Maricopa County school over here versus this school over here. Be where your feet at. So all of these things we used to hear playing sports, using all of these things now in my next kind of phase of life. And it's really served me, because one of the things I know for sure, back in the day when you played football, maybe you were having a bad day, maybe certain things, you could just go out into the football field and just run through people. Man, you had a great day of practice, Langston. They didn't know I'm arguing with my wife and I'm taking everything out. Now you don't get the luxury of doing that. When you try to do that stuff now, they just lock your behind up. Or nobody will hire your company to come speak, because yeah, those dudes got a great message, but they're crazy. You know what I'm saying? So it's about trying to find that right little balance. And that's the one thing I know with sports, where you go too hard, you're ineffective. You go too soft, you get pushed around. So there's that fine little equanimity in there that you got to kind of look for and find. I think they call that balance or something like that.
Mhm. Well, and I love how you brought up the aspect of the manuscript. And because what's going on today, it might not work. You never know. I recently learned, so a little backstory about me and like when I was born. My uncle gave me my first stuffed animal. Right when I was born, he gifted me with the Curious George.
Okay.
And boy, did that set me up. I actually have on my desk right now, I found like a year ago, a Curious George tabletop, like a little pink, was that pinball set. Like I have almost every Curious George book. Love Curious George. I will tell any kid, like, go read Curious George. And all this stuff. And I have pictures at like Universal when they recently demolished it, but like the Curious George area. Oh no, you better bet I was there taking pictures as a grown adult with like a little kids playing in the background when I went a few years ago and sent it to my aunt and uncle and my family. And I was like, Curious George. But I recently learned that the writers of Curious George were fleeing, the Nazis and everything like that, because they were Jewish. And as they were fleeing, they took a manuscript they had just finished writing, the husband and wife duo, and it was the first Curious George book. And if they didn't take that manuscript with them, who knows if Curious George would have ever come to be. And it just shows, like, at that time, that family had a dream. They wanted to write something. Obviously, due to so many different things, they could not release it. Also, they were just fleeing for their lives. So, like, totally understandable, right? But years later, it started the movement of what Curious George is now. One book, one manuscript that was written during that time ended up creating books, stuffed animals, kids' television shows, pushing curiosity, so many things that has become an empire. but no one knew that then. Like they didn't even think about that. So you really never know the trajectory of something. And like you said, Langston, sometimes it's just a not right now, and revisit it in a year and it could be completely different. And for you, you speak about going in and giving different talks to different individuals. How do you handle deciding what is the right conversation to have with the right group of individuals and how they're really going to perceive it? Because I could only imagine, and I know that talking to kids and talking to corporate is very different, and you have to meet them in different spots. Um, Even though if any of us have ever worked in corporate, we might be like,
I'm about to say very similar to some high school kids we work with sometimes, you know what I'm saying? But very interesting. No, I think it goes back to, same way with sports. Like I would never, I would never go into a game without watching film or being curious about who I was playing. I know to win a football game, like yeah, I scored one more point than the other team, but how do we do that? How do we mitigate what they do well? How do we? So it's the same way I think when we're trying to work with corporate or high schoolers or elementary kids or wherever. I could have, man, I got the perfect story, but having a conversation and trying to figure out what they need and how's the best way that I can serve them. And maybe that story that I had in mind is not appropriate. No, it's this other story that I forgot about. And so that's one of the things that one, you got to make sure, and that's what we tell a lot of these young kids. And when I say young kids, I'm not some, I'm football old, but I'm not, real life old. Is that you got to do a whole bunch of living. You got to do a whole bunch of, back to the example, like I said, like we wanted to do leadership books. Yeah, we were at, statistically speaking, we played in the SEC. We had a big turnaround. We played for Lou Holtz. Academic All Americans, captains of our teams, but still, we're only 22 years old. We couldn't tell you about marriage. We couldn't tell you about, being audited or what it was like, So that's the one thing, having some patience, making sure and having the humility to be like, man, I can vividly remember this. We played Alabama my senior year. Now, again, Mr. Langston Moore, supposed to be the big bad, whatever. We played against Alabama at home. We won the game, but all the pictures that we have, I'm crying. Not crying because I'm excited, not crying because this is the first time we beat Alabama in a long time. It's because I played like trash my senior year. And I thought it was supposed to be the Langston Moore show that day. Well, the guy who actually played the best was my backup. His name is Sean Smith. Sean Smith actually played in the NFL longer than I did, and he didn't even get drafted. He played 11, 12 years. And so I always tell kids and I always tell folks a lot of the stories, just because you're up front doesn't mean, the guy behind you isn't. And so you never know. And so expectations versus reality, how you think things are supposed to work out. Again, thank goodness for your team. Thank goodness for your family. And this is the same way as you start to build out your next play, especially a lot of guys transitioning from sports. A lot of times I got to do it on my own. No, that's the time when you need to build up your team. You need to have your special teams. You need to have your spiritual guys over here. You need to have some folks over here. You need to have some defense, some good attorneys, some good IRS folks, some good CPAs to help you save you from yourself. You need to have some good offense over here, and then you need to have somebody take care of your body. It's the same way, and that's the things. And having the humility to ask for that help. Now, again, when we're on the football field and you don't know to play, you'll look over at your partner and be like, "What are we doing?" Now, sometimes a lot of folks and a lot of friends that I have, you go through your life with your spouse, you're like, you won't even ask them what they're doing. Like, what are we doing today? Like, you just kind of blindly going through. And so, again, I think that's a lot of the lessons that, we forget about. And these are the things, like we always say, nothing is ever wasted. We look in nature, the leaves that fall from the tree are the things that, turn into mulch that nourish the tree, that, not to get into, the stuff we breathe out is what the plants breathe in. And so it's the same way. And not to get all, hippie-ish on you right here, but it's the same way. And for human beings, and especially for a lot of A-type personality, folks who have been successful, our whole deal is just to drive, and whip. And, it's just, I'm not whipping hard enough. Where, as I've learned in my next transition out of sports, and that's why I brought up this physical part before, the more I kind of relax, and not to say I'm being lazy, but the more I kind of just trust that my technique is going to work, my fundamental, my team, I'm supported. Man, I've been successful pretty much in my life, man. Just because I got a no today doesn't mean anything. And it's become a running joke within our kind of company, is that, like, man, how many no's you getting today? You know what I'm saying? Now in sports, when you're pass rushing against a guy, You would never want, man, how many losses, how many times you get blocked today? But every time you got blocked, they gave you some tape to go back to the room later with your coach to sit down and say, this is where you messed up at. That guy's not better than you. Maybe he wasn't this rep, but because you did X, Y, Z, or you weren't smart. Now, it's the same way with folks when we're talking about success. It's really hard in life because, again, you don't want to look at your tape. You just want to get through the day instead of getting from the day, instead of figuring out, how can I get better? Maybe I don't have that book completed yet, but I got to put some words on the page today. And it's, 500 more pages I need of words. That means 500 more days. When you start to look at it like that, that's when you're going to go crazy. What's important now? Be where your feet at. Just do a little bit at a time. That's how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
And I think too, a lot of it is the aspect of really understanding where you are today.
Yeah.
And taking that time to really go, okay, this is where I am. And I have to understand, good, bad, or ugly. This is where we're standing, and what are those next steps to move forward, and understanding that not everything is a personal thing on you. You're making the joke about the 10 no's in a day. Like, have you gotten all these no's? And it's like, again, it goes back to that idea we talked about earlier, is that just because the no's today doesn't mean it will be a no tomorrow. It's also because you're getting that no. It's not because they don't like you as a person. It might not just be a fit right now.
Right.
You also don't know the backside of things. Like, this happens in the NFL or corporate or speaking or publishing books, whatever it might be. The money might not be there. It can solely be a dollar issue. I've had many people come to me and ask me to speak or do this and that. And when we start talking, they go, oh, wait, I just don't have the money right now. Like, I want to do this. And I've had people come back to me when the time's right and go, okay, now we want to move forward. And so you have to remember, like, also don't burn the bridges, because you never know when they could turn back.
100%. It's the same. Again, you get this in sports. So, oh man, he's a bad app. The word is out on that. It's the same way with your business. And I laugh as you say that because, again, going back to my partner and our speaking business and ideas and different things, we just look at it as our business as a runway. The worst thing you want to do when you're at Atlanta International or DFW, look out that and you just see, oh man, they got 100 planes before we even take off. And that's the same way when we're talking about our own business. Yes, we want to fill up this runway. We want to fill up because a lot of times it's, we want you 2 years from now, or we already spent our budget for the next 18 months. But if it was, man, I need this money, I need it right now, because again, we all need money and all these, again, the desperation, and other people feel that. And it's the same way, again, in sports, maybe feeling, that strain, that desperation. In sports, people revere that, but in business, it's kind of like dating. You're like, oh, why is this person so desperate? Now, again, they might really be interested into you, and but there's just something about it. And so again, it's that quiet confidence. It's that just because they say no doesn't mean it's forever. It just means not right now. Or maybe it's something that's an opportunity for you to learn the billing cycle about this particular organization because they do all their stuff in June when you were thinking it's all done in January. And so again, it's all about lessons. Where no different than football. You don't want to be getting ready for football in January. That's the end of the season. You want to be recovering. You want to get your body together. Summertime is the time when you start to, get those extra pounds off and get your 40 times shaved down so it's effective in there. So again, being aware, just understanding that you're not something on the ocean of life being pushed around by life. It's actually something that's trying to push you in a direction, but it can seem very personal. And that's, again, taking the sports analogies like, oh man, he hit me, he did this, he did. No, we all understand and accept that football, he may hit you, I may hit him. If you get me first, I think in recovery, they call this acceptance. And so once I accept what's going on, once I understand what my opportunities are, what my choices are, I might not like them, but at least I can start making the right choices and doing some things that'll get me where I want to go, maybe even out of this situation, as opposed to just being like, I just don't like this. Look, I didn't like running, but I had to accept the fact that to play football, you got to have to run. So, as soon as you get over that, life is going to be a little bit easier for you in that context.
Well, thank you, Langston, for all of your insight today. There's been so many amazing things you and I've talked about, and really I have loved not only have we've had a interesting and dynamic conversation about your journey, but even in how you relate it to your football journey, you are able to relate it to so many different aspects of life. And I truly love and have enjoyed that today.
No, I appreciate it.
Um,
And thank you for the opportunity.
and a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation is good play, bad play. It is all about the next play. And I love how Langston mentioned that, and he has mentioned it in the beginning of the show and really throughout the episode. Like, the play you just did is the play you just did. Keep your eye on the next play, whether that is in sports or in corporate world or in owning your own business. Good or bad, you have to keep moving forward. You have to keep your eye on that next play that you have to do to keep moving your goals and keep hitting marks that you want to hit, as well as there's no small accomplishments. I think a lot of the time, and Langston mentioned this, when we're going through our journey of life and we're really focused on one thing, we miss some of the other accomplishments that we have gained, whether we expected them or not, throughout that journey. So take a moment every day, recognize the accomplishments you did get done. Oh, I had time to talk to my friends today. Oh, I hit this money goal today. Oh, I did this. Take the moments to go, what did I accomplish today? And go, what are those small accomplishments and how can I recognize them into my everyday life, which will also help change your mindset on things, as well as, do you love ball or do you love what it gives to you? I also love how Langston mentioned this, because sometimes we all have to ask ourselves, why are we doing this? What is the true reason? Do we love what we're doing? Are we passionate about it? Is it giving us what we need to get out of it to keep pursuing it? Or are we doing it for potentially just the monetary gain? We hate where we are, we feel stuck, but the money's good. So we just need to keep doing it. Really sit down and ask yourself that, as well as, just because it's a no today does not mean it's a no tomorrow. I think we all need to sometimes take a step back and go, okay, why did I get that no? Like Langston and I were talking about, it could be a financial reason. It could be, it's just not the right time. They could circle back to you. Just because it's a no and it doesn't work today does not mean it won't work tomorrow. And sometimes it's just not a personality fit. You could take the same idea and turn it to someone else and they could say yes. As well as, you need to build out your team. I think whether it's personally or professionally, a lot of us sometimes forget that we need that team to stand by us, not just behind us or in front of us, but really next to us. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Langston Moore. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.